Let's take you back now to the Madlanga Commission of Inquiry, where SABC News reporter Canny Maphanga is in Pretoria and joins us now for an update on proceedings so far. So, Canny, we saw there throughout the course of the morning, IPID processes still firmly under the spotlight there at the Commission.
Indeed. Good morning to you, Olise, and to the viewers at home once again. It's quite interesting, the testimony as it continues to develop before the Madlanga Commission. We're now getting an understanding as to what exactly took place with members of that particular unit under the supervision of now suspended Deputy IPID Police Chief Julius Mkhwanazi, and the kind of allegations that followed them in the Ekurhuleni region. Now, the space that we're looking in is in those truck thefts, extortion cases, and even extending to the murder case. But essentially, if you remember from the testimony in phase 1, is that these EMPD officials allegedly were forming part of this syndicate, for lack of a better term, who were allegedly stopping these trucks under legitimate violations, but using those violations to impound those vehicles and then, of course, allegedly rob the vehicles of their goods. In this particular instance, the case number that is being discussed, that truck had goods worth about 1 million, we're told, before the commission, and the goal was not to impound the car, or the truck rather, for the small violations, but it really was to get to the contents of that particular truck and get those goods moved from the truck before it could be returned to the rightful owner. But the gist of this evidence is not really about the incidents themselves, but the systems that exist not only to hold those EMPD officers accountable, but to ensure something like this doesn't take place within the EMPD. Now, we're hearing from Mr. Magagula is that this particular incident of the truck theft, it was actually EMPD that learnt of it first, because we're seeing that when the owner turned to SABC couldn't go forth with that particular incident because it was listed as a truck theft and the register showed that the vehicle was returned to the owner. But the real contents, or rather the substance of what was taking place, is that it was an alleged robbery of those goods. The owner then turns to the EMPD and gives a statement. So does the driver, and the statement implicates Kershali Stalls and Etienne, I think it's, or rather Arjun Mackenzie, and Etienne is the civilian. So with respect to the first two, we'll deal with that because they're actually the EMPD employees. They're not the civilian who was assisting with the private security vehicle. So that means that in that incident, EMPD knew first about the allegations and was empowered internally to trigger off those disciplinary proceedings. However, it seems that they sat on it and waited for IPID to complete their investigations, and IPID gets the information last. And this speaks to that systemic problem that you have with IPID along with the officers that they have to investigate, is that they have the standard operating procedure where it seems that the municipalities or the police officers concerned are relying on that IPID investigation to be complete before they can take action. But we do know, Olise, that the threshold for an internal disciplinary hearing is not the same as that of when you take a matter to a criminal court. So on the very least, on the allegations that these particular officers were facing, a number of them, by the way, in a string of cases that were following them in the Ekurhuleni Metro Police Department, there was enough to start that internal proceedings. And we see Mr. Magagula giving us several examples that go far beyond these individuals within the EMPD who are alleged to be running that alleged criminality under the alleged parallel structure of Julius Mkhwanazi. It extends to cases beyond that, even going to cases of rape where police officers were implicated in rape cases, and we saw that the municipality waited until the criminal conviction was successful or took place before they acted on that individual. So it's not clear whether it's a misreading, Olise, of the standard operating procedure, or if that is the expectation for this watchdog, that only you can only act rather if those reports are given both to the stakeholder, whether it is EMPD or SABC or whatever law enforcement agency, and when the report concurrently goes to the DPP for a decision. So that is a gap, a systemic gap that has been identified. It's not clear whether it's a misreading of that procedure or if municipalities, or rather the EMPD, are just sitting on these allegations waiting for an outcome from IPID, knowing that there's significant challenges in ensuring that those particular investigations are completed. So that's yet another gap that the Commission will have to address in its reforms with respect to how these law enforcement agencies deal with members who are said to be these shadowy figures that are allegedly involved in criminality, how they deal with them while there's concurrent investigations or criminal investigations, and why it is not necessary to place both on the same level, and that an EMPD, for example, could start acting if they learn of such information before relying on IPID to complete an investigation because of the complexities that come with cases like this, such as the truck theft case, where you have the main complainant not willing to cooperate with the investigation out of fears of the police, which is genuine fears, because we have seen that in this particular region that a number of suspects in cases involved, where IPID is involved rather, have been lost due to shootings, and people are afraid to speak on those matters. But that does not stop the internal process from continuing. So that is a gap that is going to be developed quite further as the questioning continues until 4 p.m. this afternoon, where Magagula is expected to really explain these cases, the status of the cases that he is responsible for, because he also is facing an overall allegation that he allegedly stalled the investigations to protect these officers. But it seems from the evidence before the Commission that there's more layers to the work of IPID with respect to EMPD and the kind of expectations and the status of those investigations as they stand against the backdrop of what is taking place internally in the EMPD.
And interestingly, Canny, as I take in everything that you are saying right now, this clearly now sheds the light on some of the procedures that we've seen there within IPID. And of course, it would be interesting just to find out how, all of these, procedures take shape just going forward as well. That's Canny Maphanga watching proceedings for us there at the Madlanga Commission. Thanks so much for that update. We'll be touching base with Canny at about 11:30 when that commission continues.